Stop and start pushes are a natural consequence of the nature of the wrestling business. Wrestlers can be de-pushed for a number of reasons. They can get injured, they can get suspended, or backstage influence can alter their position on the card. More on that in another video. Now this list in theory could be 100 superstars long, as there are hundreds upon hundreds of instances of superstars losing their push, and the stories behind that said push coming to an end. But for now, we'll just stick with 10. So join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 WWE superstars whose push was instantly and inexplicably cancelled. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos. Number 1. Ricochet. The most recent addition to this list is Ricochet. Following a successful run in the NXT brand, which included a North American title reign, Ricochet would move to the main roster in 2019. Ricochet had attained great success within NXT and was even cited as increasing live event attendance for the brand during his time there. Ricochet would be presented well initially on Raw. He would win the US title and feud with the likes of Samoa Joe, Drew McIntyre and AJ Styles. However, it was in February 2020 that he would receive the biggest opportunity of his career, a WWE title match against Brock Lesnar on pay-per-view. Fans were hoping they would get a competitive match, as Lesnar thrives by working with smaller talents such as Rey Mysterio, Daniel Bryan and Kurt Angle. Unfortunately, Ricochet would be squashed in 1 minute 34 seconds, destroying his push in an instant. Following the loss, Ricochet would lose to Riddick Moss on Raw in a 24/7 title match before being relegated to WWE main event for the foreseeable future. It's unknown why WWE stopped the push for Ricochet. Some believe it's due to his promo work being the biggest part of his character, and whilst this is a fair and accurate point, it begs the question, why was Ricochet given the WWE title match in the first place if they had no faith in him? Number 2. Rikishi. Rikishi was one of the most popular superstars of the Attitude Era alongside Too Cool, so naturally it was seen as a surprise when WWE opted to turn him heel in the year 2000. The payoff to the angle of who ran over Stone Cold Steve Austin was answered in that same year, when it was revealed that Rikishi was the one who undertook the heinous act. The justification for Rikishi running over Stone Cold was that
I did it for The Rock.
it made little sense and it was a swerve for the sake of a swerve. It clearly didn't work. Rikishi had gone from having a pure connection with the audience based on his charisma and charm to having zero connection as the fans were switched off from the storyline and Rikishi in general. The angle was so negatively received that Rikishi, upon returning from injury in 2002, would find himself at the bottom level of the card once again as a babyface, and his dark motives would never be mentioned again. That and never having a main event match. Number 3. Cedric Alexander. Following an incredible successful run on 205 Live, Cedric Alexander would be moved to the Raw brand in 2019. After hovering around the show for a few months, having solid, enjoyable television matches, Cedric would be given the biggest push of his career. He would main event a Raw show at Madison Square Garden and pin the then US champion AJ Styles. Fans were expecting a strong, substantial push to come from this, as to allow someone to get a major win in the main event of Raw at MSG of all places is no small feat. Cedric would get his shot at AJ at the Clash of Champions event, however the presentation of Cedric was drastically different, as he would lose in convincing fashion in 4 minutes on the pre-show, a strong contrast to the presentation on Raw emanating from MSG. Following this, Cedric would wrestle exclusively on main event, and his push would be pretty much dead. It was reported by Dave Meltzer that the reason for his push coming to an anticlimactic end was that Vince McMahon had just simply given up on him. A very strange move from Vince, as he lost faith between allowing Cedric to main event and win during the main event of Raw at MSG, and then lose in 4 minutes on a kickoff of a pay-per-view. Number 4. MORDECAI. MORDECAI debuted in 2004 on the SmackDown brand. In essence, he was portrayed as the anti-Undertaker. MORDECAI was a character that would rant about sinners and inform the audience that they are heading straight to hell. He would dress in a similar attire to The Undertaker, however his attire would be white in colour to draw a complete contrast to The Undertaker's established colour of black. On paper, an Undertaker vs anti-Undertaker feud was money, and according to MORDECAI himself, it was initially supposed to be MORDECAI vs The Undertaker at WrestleMania 21, however it wasn't to be. The character never connected with the 2004 audience, and in fact, nearly all of MORDECAI's matches were met with utter silence. Fans simply didn't get it. His wrestling consisted of rest holds and body slams, and in 2004 Ruthless Aggression audience simply wanted something more substantial. Therefore, WWE opted to send Mordecai back to developmental, where he would have more success, somewhat as the Kevin Thorne character in the revamped ECW brand. Number 5. Alex Riley. Alex Riley would make his WWE debut as part of the second season of NXT. He would be mentored by The Miz in a partnership that was the strongest out of all the pro/rookie combinations that the series had to offer. From September of 2010 onwards, Riley would be moved to Raw and would accompany The Miz to all his matches. This extended to a huge spotlight for Riley as Miz would soon win the WWE title and main event WrestleMania 27, which naturally incorporated Riley into the storylines and narratives that would have come from that said spotlight. Riley in June of 2011 would begin a huge babyface push when he would turn on The Miz, citing the mouths of verbal abuse as justification for his actions. The crowd was really into Riley as he managed to connect with them, thanks in part to Miz's tremendous heel work, but also Riley's natural charisma. Riley would even defeat Miz on pay-per-view to blow off their feud, and fans assumed that this was the start of a huge push for him, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. It was rumored that Riley's D-push following the Miz pay-per-view victory was due to a backstage incident involving John Cena and Cena not taking a liking to Riley. Riley would eventually be moved to the NXT commentary team before being released in 2016. This was a clear case of backstage influence altering career trajectories. What was the ceiling of Riley in WWE? I guess we'll never know. Number 6. Kaval. Following an extremely successful career in the likes of TNA and Ring of Honor, Low-Ki would sign with the WWE under his new name Kaval. He would become a part of the second season of the NXT brand. The prior season was won by Wade Barrett, who entered in a main event program with John Cena following the win. Therefore, it was expected that the winner would be somewhat positioned in the same manner. Kaval was to be paired with LeCool in an odd pairing that actually worked and managed to attain Kaval some admiration with the live audience. Kaval would go on to win the second season and would be granted a title match for any title on the SmackDown brand. So in theory, you would expect Kaval to pick the world champion, right? Well, after pinning then Intercontinental Champion Dolph Ziggler in a match that was billed as a complete upset, Kaval would declare that he was cashing in his shot at the Survivor Series pay-per-view for Ziggler's Intercontinental Championship. This was extremely strange from a kayfabe point of view of someone who had the opportunity to compete for the top prize would instead settle for the second best prize, and it was a move that puzzles fans to this day. 1 month later in December 2010, WWE Creative informed Kaval that they had no plans for him. He then asked for his release from the company, which was granted. It begs the question, why allow someone you have no plans for to win a reality show that grants you a title match? A very strange move on the WWE's part. Number 7. Zack Ryder. Zack Ryder attracted an organic following the success of his YouTube series Z True Long Island Story. Ryder had built his following based on his personality and love for wrestling, and this resonated with wrestling fans so much so that Ryder was the most over person on at the 2011 Survivor Series pay-per-view, a pay-per-view that featured The Rock, even though he didn't even have a match. Ryder's push was somewhat bizarre. He won the US title and then lost it all in the space of a month. He was involved in the Kane/John Cena storyline, which involved him constantly being beaten down, and he never failed to attain any momentum during the aforementioned story. Following WrestleMania 28, Ryder would never really be placed in a prominent position ever again. The likely reason for this is because WWE has a history of not appreciating superstars getting over if the narrative indicates they should be and stay at a certain level. This was certainly present with the case of Ryder during 2012. Number 8. CESARO. CESARO is often cited as one of the superstars that WWE fans would have liked to see get a substantial push. He's one of the best pure wrestlers in the entire company, and fans have been campaigning for nearly half a decade to get CESARO in a prominent role. However, why did the initial push of CESARO in 2014 end? WrestleMania 30 should have been the coming out party for CESARO. He secured a victory in the first ever Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal and attained a WrestleMania moment by slamming the Big Show over the top rope. During the next night on Raw, CESARO would join forces with Paul Heyman and officially become a Heyman guy, a move that had benefited the careers of the likes of Brock Lesnar and CM Punk. The issues unfortunately began here. CESARO had turned into an organic babyface and the fans wanted to cheer him, therefore aligning him with the villainous Heyman meant he would remain a heel, and this was a poor lack of judgment from the WWE's perspective. On paper, Heyman aligning with Cesaro should have led to Cesaro winning the world title, but it wasn't meant to be. They didn't have any chemistry whatsoever, and the pairing came across as somewhat unnatural and disingenuous. By July of 2014, the partnership would come to an end and Cesaro would begin a long losing streak. Cesaro in essence was punished for the WWE failing to realize that keeping a superstar that fans wanted to cheer as a heel wasn't gonna work. And to this day, Cesaro has been in a similar position on the card, mainly competing in random tag team matches. Number 9. Rusev. Cast your minds back to SmackDown Live in 2017, as Jinder Mahal was WWE Champion, and the most overact on the show is a tag team featuring Rusev and Aiden English. The pairing between Rusev and English was extremely random and confusing initially, as there was no prior connection between the two characters, but despite this, they developed tremendous chemistry. Rusev would begin to allude to every day as Rusev Day. In turn, fans would begin to chant Rusev Day whenever Rusev in English would appear. By December of 2017, the Rusev Day t-shirt was the top selling on WWEshop.com, beating the shirts of the likes of The Shield and AJ Styles. This was a crazy accolade, pun intended, for Rusev to acclaim. Naturally, a big push should have followed. Rusev had it all: the charisma, the crowd connection, and the merch sales to warrant a main event babyface push. But this never occurred, as the biggest spotlight he attained was receiving a WWE title match against AJ Styles at the Extreme Rules event. However, this was an awkward booking decision as the crowd didn't know who to root for, and thus it was presented as a mismatch due to Rusev still being a heel. In July, WWE finally decided to return Rusev babyface, arguably 7 months too late, but thankfully he was finally a babyface. However, 2 months later, WWE would break up the team of English and Rusev by turning English heel, a move that made little sense and did nothing for either man. In January of 2019, WWE would turn Rusev heel, and gone would be the Rusev Day related gestures that would be accustomed to Rusev's act. WWE had killed it, and for what reason? What did they benefit from killing the push? Pushing Rusev into a prominent spotlight during the peak of Rusev Day was surely best for business. And number 10, Lex Luger. Following Hulk Hogan's departure in 1993, WWE needed new top stars who would carry the company. Vince McMahon looked towards Lex Luger, who had previously had a successful run in WCW, to be the guy to fill in the very large shoes of the legendary Hogan. He was everything Vince looked for in a top guy at the time. He had the body of a Greek god and could have pay-per-view quality matches. Well, pay-per-view quality at the time. WWE's idea to push Luger would revolve around him touring the country in a travel bus, appropriately named the Lex Express. Luger would finally get a chance in the main event scene at WWE's SummerSlam 1993 pay-per-view, where he would face Yokozuna, a man who he had famously body-slammed. But in a bizarre finish, Luger would win by countout and then celebrated with fellow babyfaces as if he'd just won the WWE title. Luger would then go on to co-win the Royal Rumble in 1994 with Bret Hart, which resulted in him attaining a WrestleMania title match, where he lost by DQ in another lackluster finish. WWE virtually killed a push after this and proceeded to move forward with Bret Hart as the face of the company. WWE tried to portray Luger as Hulk Hogan 2.0, both in terms of gimmick and overall presentation, rather than allow Luger to be his own superstar, and it was clear that the fans wanted something different moving forward. But there you have it, guys. 10 WWE superstars whose push was instantly and inexplicably cancelled. Be sure to leave your comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.